Good afternoon. This hearing will come to order. I'd like to welcome you all to today's hearing to consider the nomination of Mr. Peter Mezer to be the Assistant Secretary for Intelligence and Analysis at the Department of the Treasury, and Mr. Josh Simmons to be the General Counsel of the Central Intelligence Agency. I would like to remind all of those in attendance that while you are welcome to observe today's hearing, Vice Chairman Warner and I agree that we will not allow disruptions by the audience. Audience members may not verbally or physically distract from the hearing, including by shouting, standing, raising signs, or making gestures that block the view of other members of the audience. Put simply, we came here to hear from Mr. Mezer and Mr. Simmons, not from you. If I have to have anyone removed from this hearing, I will take further action to have you barred from committee's future proceedings, coming within a country mile of the committee's rooms and spaces in the Capitol, and barring you from the Capitol. Our goal is to conduct this hearing. In conducting this hearing is to enable the committee to begin consideration of the nominees' qualifications. Have him removed immediately.
You will stop and cease the war in Gaza.
We will stop nothing. You will stop your disruption, and you will not be seen by this committee again.
You will stop the genocide in Gaza.
The only genocide that has happened since October 7th is the genocide that Hamas perpetrated against the Jewish people. Is there anyone else who'd like to get it off their chest now to save us time? All right. Each nominee here has provided substantive written responses to dozens of questions presented by the committee. Today, of course, members will be able to ask additional questions and hear from the nominees. Let me first begin by thanking both of the nominees for their willingness to, once again, answer the call to public service. I'd also like to recognize and thank their families and loved ones, many of whom are sitting right behind them, for offering their encouragement and support. Throughout their careers, both nominees before the committee have given their time and talents to our nation. Many of those on this committee have had the pleasure to work with Mr. Mezer, who currently serves as a professional staff member on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. As a designee to Senator Rounds, Mr. Mezer has spent his time with this committee covering issue areas including the CIA, FBI, covert action, counterintelligence, the Middle East, and Africa. Mr. Mezer, as Assistant Secretary for Intelligence and Analysis at Treasury, you will be expected to support the U.S. government with timely intelligence on economic security concerns, financial intelligence matters, and the implementation of economic statecraft tools. This is a critical position, especially as communist China wages an economic and technological war to dominate emerging technologies and works to displace the United States as the predominant economic and military power in the world. Next, we have Mr. Simmons, who is currently the Principal Deputy Legal Advisor at the U.S. Department of State. During his time at the State Department, Mr. Simmons has worked on foreign policy and national security matters, including intelligence sharing, covert action, and the law of armed conflict. Mr. Simmons also previously spent time in private law practice, where he handled international arbitration disputes pertaining to national security. Mr. Simmons, as CIA General Counsel, you will be expected to provide timely and efficient legal guidance in support of ongoing worldwide intelligence operations. The work of the General Counsel's Office touches every aspect of the agency's business, including the procurement of resources, handling personnel matters, facilitating lawful intelligence collection, and conducting presidentially authorized covert action. This committee is committed to ensuring our intelligence agencies and officers return to the core mission of collecting clandestine foreign intelligence. After years of misplaced priorities, allowed bureaucratic bloat, risk aversion, and political judgment masquerading as legal advice to creep into America's intelligence apparatus, it is time to right the ship. With this in mind, I look forward to hearing from our nominees how they plan to approach their respective roles. Again, thank you both for being here and once again answering the call to public service. I now recognize our distinguished Vice Chairman for any opening remarks.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, let me congratulate both of the witnesses on your nominations. And while your roles may not attract the same public attention as the DNI or the CIA director, your responsibilities would be no less vital to our national security. You'll play a key role in ensuring that our intelligence agencies operate both lawfully and effectively. And as Peter, particularly you know, this committee doesn't do a lot of things in public hearings, and I do want to share some of my concerns as we go into these unprecedented times. And because me, it feels like there are new precedents being set virtually every day. Recently, the Secretary of Defense pulled hundreds of military officers from their duties to lecture them on grooming standards and urge them to ignore stupid rules of engagement, even as Europe is engaged in a land war with Russia and China threatens Taiwan. The president then went further, encouraging the use of American cities as training grounds for the military, while deploying armed soldiers to occupy the citizens and arrest American citizens. Deployments that courts, including judges he appointed, have ruled illegal. Now, to their credit, those officers at Quantico responded with the professionalism and nonpartisan discipline we expect from our men and women in uniform. But the sheer lack of respect shown by President Trump and Secretary Hegseth for our military and for rule of law should concern all of us. But this is not just a matter of respect. I believe the President and some of his administration are continuing to take actions that make America less safe. Early in his term, the President boasted about the capture of the ISIS terrorist responsible for the Kabul bombing that killed 13 American service members. What he did not highlight is how he had actually fired the head of FBI's counterterrorism division responsible for that very investigation. That was not an isolated decision. He also fired the head of the FBI branch that takes down criminal organizations and drug traffickers, as well as leaders of the Bureau's intelligence and cyber divisions. Even, as both you gentlemen know, our adversaries are working around the clock to spy on America and penetrate our critical infrastructure through ventures like Salt Typhoon. He has dismissed the heads of major field offices from Washington to Miami, again, one of the biggest drug enforcement hubs in our country. Together with the FBI director, he's forced out thousands of experienced agents for reasons that appear more political than professional, including, from reports, FBI agents that refused to lie about the 2020 election. And frankly, for reasons that appear more petty than performance-based, like being friends with public critics of the president. According to court filings, even Director Patel has recently acknowledged that these actions may be illegal, but said that his position depended on removing those agents. And this is what is the really shocking news. And I ask all my colleagues to listen. In recent months, nearly a quarter of the FBI agents who handle counterterrorism, cyber, espionage, and other criminal cases have been assigned to immigration cases. In some field offices, that number goes up to 45%. Firing or transferring agents who investigate terrorists, drug traffickers, and sexual predators, and pulling back cyber expertise targeting Chinese and Russian hackers does not make America feel safe. Sadly, I feel like, again, and I've talked to my colleagues about this is only a fraction of the damage done to our national security in the last 9 months. Across the intelligence community, the Defense Department, Treasury, and Justice, career experts with decades of service, many in the combat zones, are being pushed out not for poor performance, but for refusing to put loyalty to political narratives above their oath to the Constitution. Matter of fact, the infrastructure that the first Trump administration set up in 2018 in a really good move to ensure safe and secure elections, and it was remarkable what they did in 2018, going after Russian troll farms, Chinese threats to local candidates, and Iranian attempts to stoke violence. All of that operation has been dismantled. And just this week, it was reported in the Wall Street Journal that the DHS disbanded a federal team that once pursued child traffickers and a task force that once focused on stemming the flow of fentanyl. I just don't understand how that's making America safer. Now, Mr. Simmons and Mr. Mezer, you may wonder what this has to do with you and the jobs that you are being nominated for. And you both bring significant relevant experience to these nominations. Mr. Simmons is a former UVA law professor and principal legal advisor at the State Department. And Mr. Metzger, as we all know, he was a former senior staffer on this committee. You've both served in roles where speaking truth to power and upholding the law were the core responsibilities. If confirmed to these new roles, you will be called upon to demonstrate that same commitment to speaking truth to power and upholding the rule of law, even when doing so is politically inconvenient. And I believe this moment is not about partisan politics, about whether America will maintain an intelligence community that can operate independently and provide unvarnished assessments of challenges we face. You know better than most that our adversaries are not letting up. Day after day, we see intelligence about how they're becoming more creative, more aggressive, and more coordinated in their efforts to weaken our country. And I worry that the holes the administration is creating in our national security enterprise leaves Americans dangerously vulnerable. Mr. Metzger and Mr. Simmons, if you are confirmed, the men and women you will lead and the American people will expect nothing less than your absolute devotion to truth. Today, I look forward to hearing how each of you intends to uphold that solemn responsibility. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
I would now like to recognize Senator Rounds for a few words of support of Mr. Metzger, who allegedly performed outstanding work for him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll dispense with the hazing to begin with here, but today I do have the unique privilege of saying a few words about my former designated staff member on the committee, Mr. Peter Metzger. Serving 4 years on this professional staff, Peter managed some of our nation's most sensitive and complex intelligence matters with extraordinary expertise and attention. During his tenure, he covered covert action, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, counterintelligence, the Middle East, and other specialized intelligence portfolios, demonstrating an impressive breadth of knowledge and commitment to serve wherever called. He conducted critical intelligence oversight in over 35 countries during his tenure, monitoring key intelligence outposts across the globe, and helped to author imperative legislation that bolstered the intelligence community and made our country safer. I had the privilege to get to know Peter personally during his time and can attest to his tremendous professionalism, devotion to mission, and high character. He was a great support and resource to me in carrying out my responsibilities as a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and I want to express my gratitude for that. As such, it's no wonder that President Trump had the confidence in him to nominate Peter for Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Intelligence and Analysis. This nomination is the next step in a life's work in service to our nation. First as an attorney, then as a United States Marine Corps officer, and most recently as a policy advisor and national security expert in the highest levels of the United States government. I'd highlight his time in the White House on the National Security Council staff as a special assistant to the president, where, as the former National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien said, Peter's expertise proved vital to the president. I certainly expect this to hold true in his next role. I have no doubt that if confirmed, Peter will serve our country admirably in this post, and in that event, we'll look forward to seeing you back here often. I'd also like to note that it's been an exciting time in the Metzger family lately. Peter and his wife Tippy welcomed their son into the family in August, and not 2 weeks later, the president nominated him for assistant secretary. Now, I know one of those things is a whole lot more important than the other, but nonetheless, I believe it's a great testament to your growing family's devotion to service. So congratulations, Peter and Tippy. And Tippy, we want to thank you for your support during this nomination process, knowing that this is indeed a family endeavor. The position to which Mr. Metzger is nominated is responsible for the analysis and dissemination of financial intelligence across the government. Through Peter's legal background, service in uniform, service in the intelligence community, time in the White House, and time on this committee, I believe we're hard-pressed to find anyone more suited to the task. If confirmed, members of this committee should find great comfort in having a public servant of this caliber in this role. In closing, I want to offer my strongest endorsement of Mr. Metzger to serve as Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Intelligence and Analysis. Owing to Peter's demonstrated commitment to service, his wealth of national security expertise, and his unimpeachable character, I have the utmost confidence that, if confirmed, he will bring great credit to the department and the executive branch. Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rounds. I'm shocked and disappointed the one-month-old Metzger boy isn't here with us. But years from now, when you reflect on it, I'm sure the Simmons children will assure him that they didn't miss anything because it was very boring. Gentlemen, before we move on to your opening statements, we have 5 customary questions we ask of all witnesses who appear before the committee. So if we could get just a simple yes or no answer for the record. If you want the keys to the test, the correct answer is yes. If it's no, it will require an immediate and extended explanation. 1, do you agree to appear before the committee here or in other venues when invited?
Yes. Yes.
2, if confirmed, do you agree to send officials from your office to appear before the committee and designated staff when invited?
Yes. Yes.
3, do you agree to provide documents or any other materials requested by the committee in order for it to carry out its oversight and legislative responsibilities?
Yes.
4, will you ensure that your office and your staff provide such material to the committee when requested?
Yes. Yes.
And 5, do you agree to inform and fully brief to the full extent possible all members of this committee of intelligence activities and covert actions rather than only the chairman and vice chairman?
Yes.
Thank you both very much. After our hearing today, for the benefit of members, it's my intention to move quickly to convene a committee business meeting to vote on the nominations and report them to the Senate for prompt floor consideration. We will now proceed to our nominees' opening statements, after which I'll recognize members by seniority at the gavel for 5 minutes each. Mr. Metzger, we'll start with you and then go to Mr. Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Cotton, Vice Chairman Warner, and members of this committee, it is a tremendous honor to appear before you today as you consider my nomination to serve as Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Intelligence and Analysis. I would like to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, for all of the blessings of this life, including this opportunity today. My wife, Tippy, who is here today, and our newborn son for their endless love and support. President Trump for this opportunity to again serve our country, and Secretary Bessent for his confidence in me. I would also like to thank my family, including my mother and father, and the mentors, former colleagues, and close friends present at this hearing, and watching from afar, who have helped shape my career and professional development in the practice of law, in the United States Marine Corps, in U.S. Special Operations Command, in the intelligence community, in multiple executive branch national security roles, and certainly here on the staff of this august committee. Service to our country runs in my family. I am the 4th U.S. Marine officer in my family and the 2nd to have served in the intelligence community. It has been a high honor not only to continue this tradition, but also uniquely gratifying to have spent nearly 2 decades at the forefront of our country's national security. I should point out as well that my wife, Tippy, has similarly dedicated her own career to public service and national security. I'm immeasurably proud of the sacrifices she has made on behalf of our country. She inspires me daily with her devotion both to our family and to her own professional duties. Were I to be confirmed, it would be a unique privilege to lead one of the 18 components of the U.S. intelligence community. Understanding firsthand the hard and often anonymous nature of intelligence work, it would be an honor to again call the men and women of the intelligence community colleagues, especially in the Office of Intelligence and Analysis. My career to date has afforded me incredible service opportunities, often granting unfettered access to the collection and utilization of intelligence to inform national security policy decisions. During President Trump's first term, I had the opportunity to serve in the Office of the Secretary of Defense directing Syria policy, and later on the staff of the National Security Council at the White House. On the NSC staff, I led the President's policies on the Levant, and later, as a special assistant to the President for National Security Affairs, I helped lead the development of the President's Middle East and North Africa policy. Since 2021, I've had the privilege to serve on the professional staff of this committee, where my oversight portfolio responsibilities have included, among others, covert action, the Middle East, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, counterintelligence, and other specific specialized intelligence programs. Treasury's critical role in both regulating domestic financial markets and leveraging the might of the U.S. financial system toward U.S. foreign policy goals is formidable. Yet still, my experience having executed dozens of tailored sanctions designation in the White House from multiple different authorities, including executive orders and congressionally drafted legislation, provided me the opportunity to witness the exceptional power of the U.S. financial system in achieving statecraft on behalf of the United States. The power of the U.S. financial system is one of the greatest tools of the U.S. national security apparatus. Treasury's intelligence collection and analysis are critical to this instrument of national power and to the President's ability to wield as much. If confirmed, I would bring to bear my own intelligence and policy experience while leveraging an exemplary existing team within OIA. Likewise, if confirmed, I would prioritize effective task organization of the OIA team toward the President and the Secretary's objectives, ensure focused analysis of narco-terrorists and legacy terror organizations, and partner with IC colleagues to enhance collection on illicit financial activities of adversarial nation-state actors, including Iran, China, Russia, and North Korea. Finally, I would assess the counterintelligence posture of OIA personnel and Treasury infrastructure to enhance defenses against new and emerging threats. As an alumnus of this committee's staff, I pledge my continued commitment to robust congressional intelligence oversight and cooperation therewith. I thank you for your time today and look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Simmons.
Thank you, Chairman Cotton, Vice Chairman Warner, and distinguished members of the committee for the opportunity to appear before you today as the nominee to be General Counsel of the Central Intelligence Agency. I am grateful to President Trump, Director Ratcliffe, and Deputy Director Ellis for their trust and confidence in me. I also appreciate the opportunity I've had to meet with several of you before this hearing to discuss a number of important issues. I want to thank my colleagues at the State Department. Secretary Rubio and the other leaders at State have been advancing important U.S. interest in foreign policy and national security. It has been an honor and a pleasure to work with them. I understand that, if confirmed, I would not be the first attorney to have served in the office of the legal advisor at the State Department and then as General Counsel of the CIA. I think there are good reasons for this. The offices have similar sizes, similarly talented lawyers, and similar missions advising on national security matters. Both offices also confront legal issues of great complexity and often urgency. These issues require judgment and wisdom that cannot be learned from a textbook, and I am grateful to my colleagues in the Office of the Legal Advisor for sharing years of on-the-ground experience. If confirmed as General Counsel, I would use this experience to help the CIA navigate the many challenges our country faces. Director Ratcliffe has spoken to you about these challenges. They include the Chinese Communist Party, transnational drug trafficking cartels, and the Russia-Ukraine war. At the same time, we are seeing rapidly emerging technologies, from artificial intelligence to quantum computing, that could define the future of our national security. The General Counsel of the CIA is responsible for supporting the CIA's mission in facing these challenges, with fidelity to the Constitution and the rule of law. This means protecting not only American national security, but also American civil liberties. If confirmed, I would seek to advance these interests in three primary ways. First, I would provide objective, clear, and timely legal advice to enable the CIA's mission. The CIA operates under statutory authority and under the President's direction. I would lead the Office of General Counsel in ensuring that the CIA operates in accordance with the law. Second, I would work closely with lawyers across the executive branch. I strongly value such interagency collaboration, and I would build on relationships with attorneys at the National Security Council, the Department of Justice, and other agencies to ensure that policymakers receive the best legal advice in support of our national security. Third, I would lead the Office of General Counsel to work closely with this committee to enable your oversight work and to provide appropriate transparency about the basis for CIA actions. As President Eisenhower said when laying the cornerstone of the CIA headquarters, success cannot be advertised, failure cannot be explained. That remains true today. The CIA's activities are generally outside of public view, and it is a testament to the patriotic service of intelligence officers and also to the importance of this committee's oversight. At that same cornerstone ceremony, it was announced that the words from the Gospel of John would be inscribed at the entrance of the CIA headquarters. Those words, as anyone who visits the CIA knows, are, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." If confirmed, I would support that mission to know the truth and to protect and promote freedom. Finally, I want to thank my family, including my parents who are here. I come from a long line of Americans, from farmers to coal miners, who have loved our country and worked faithfully to raise families and serve their communities. Sitting here today, I am honored with the opportunity to help protect our country and those communities. I also thank my wife of over 18 years. We met in law school, and she has had a distinguished career as a government lawyer. I would not be here without her steadfast support and wisdom. As the proverb says, she is far more precious than jewels. Our children are also here today in hopes that they will be inspired seeing our great American Republic at work. Thank you again. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. I've been on this committee for almost 11 years now, and we've had a number of general counsel nominees come in front of it, and the questions often turn into very grave, somber concerns that the nominee will have the courage to stand up and say no when his bosses want to violate the law. I think this approach is wrong-headed on a couple of counts. First, it goes without saying that any lawyer should tell their clients if they're prepared to take an action that is against the law. But the first count is that, in my experience on 11 years, the much more likely scenario in which the Office of General Counsel faces pressure is to distort their legal judgment to provide a shield to decision makers who don't want to make tough decisions. So rather than having a chief of station or high-ranking director of operations officer, or even the CIA director, come to you and press you to bless something that would be illegal, more likely to try to get your office to say, no, something is out of bounds, when in fact it is in bounds, and that's just a decision that those decision makers care not to make. So you said in your opening statement, Mr. Simmons, that you would give clear advice and counsel any decision maker when something is against the law. I assume the opposite is true as well. If you are pressed to say something is against the law, when in reality it's perfectly legal, will you give that clear opinion that in your legal judgment the action is legal and it's something the decision maker is going to have to decide for himself?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think Director Radcliffe said it well when he was here, that he would follow the law as far as it goes and no further. And one of the key distinctions here is between law and policy. And I think if confirmed as general counsel, my obligation would be to provide legal advice. What are the legal authorizations and limits? And then that equips the policymakers to make the important decisions they need to make for our national security.
And those are decisions that they make as the policymakers that a general counsel does not make as the legal advisor.
That's correct, Chairman.
Thank you. So that's the first count I think that approach is wrong on. The second count is that the premise of the question usually is that there's rogue, nefarious actors throughout the agency, maybe up to and including the director and the president himself, that's always trying to break the law in some kind of dastardly way. In reality, clients go to their lawyers every day in America thinking about doing something that turns out to be a violation of the law. An Arkansas farmer could want to build a fence on what he thinks is his property line. He goes to the lawyer, and the lawyer says, actually, that's a county right-of-way. You can't build the fence there. Or a corporate executive may be planning to go on Squawk Box on CNBC and say a bunch of stuff about the stock of his company, and the general counsel has to say, actually, sir, that would be a violation of the securities law. Or a union chief in negotiations might be prepared to take certain actions, and the union general counsel has to say, actually, that would violate federal labor law. And yes, maybe even a chief of station or a CIA director or the president himself might think, we want to do this, or could we take this action? And the general counsel says, no, that would not be in accordance with law. When there's no nefarious purpose at all, it's simply you're advising clients who, by and large, are not lawyers. That's why our country has lawyers, is to advise laymen about what the law says. In each of those cases, though, you would expect your lawyer to understand your objectives and try to work towards them, towards a solution that accomplishes the client's objectives, but is consistent with law. Whether you're the Arkansas farmer or the corporate executive or the union boss or, yes, even the CIA director. So, Mr. Simmons, can we count on you whenever you're giving your plain and unvarnished advice about what is and is not on the right side of the law to also work with all of your clients at the agency and across the executive branch to help them get to yes to achieve their objectives in a manner that is consistent with law?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, throughout my legal career, I've maintained that type of open dialogue. I think it's important to have a relationship of trust with a client so that they can speak freely about what their objectives are and so that they can receive honest and clear counsel about what the law requires. And if confirmed, that would be my approach.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, I am going to ask you on this subject because, quite honestly, just recently, Senator Kaine and I went through an extensive process to nominate U.S. attorneys in the Commonwealth of Virginia, as you know, Eastern District, Western District. They had all the appropriate political bona fides. One was actually the Republican Speaker of the House. And we agreed with the chairman. You've got to work within the law. We did ask them, though, both, will you adhere to the law and not do something that you feel is illegal or inappropriate? I think we ended up picking the two right guys because they both been fired because they were asked to do things that at least they felt was counter to the law. So in that spirit and the same hope, Mr. Simmons, that you will have the same approach of honoring the law first and foremost. I mean, as I cited in my opening comments, the president recently told a gathering of U.S. military leaders they should use American cities as, quote, training grounds for our military, and that, quote, America is under invasion from within, no different than a foreign enemy. Mr. Simmons, you've been a law professor. You know the law. Do you agree with the president that America is under invasion from within, no different than a foreign enemy?
Thanks for your question, Vice Chairman. I think to your point about expectations, I would say that I've spoken with Director Radcliffe, and his expectation for me is to provide clear and honest legal advice and to comply with the law based on that advice. And throughout my career, and if confirmed to this position, my approach would be to provide that honest.
Okay, but Mr. Simmons, does that mean if the president states it, regardless of what factual basis may be underlying the statement, that is then within the law?
So on that particular issue, I haven't reviewed the legal authorities around that issue. I mean, for example, at the CIA, I know that Section 104A of the National Security Act provides that the CIA shall not have law enforcement powers. So that's the type of clear advice that would be provided if that question
arose. In other
arose.
words, if in the effort, and again, I won't quiz you more on the fact of taking folks off of counterterrorism, counterespionage, or cyber to put them on immigration, but if the president says because of this enemy from within, he wants the CIA to join in with the American military in fighting this enemy from within, what counsel would you give to Director Radcliffe?
Thanks for your question, Vice Chairman. The mission of the CIA is to collect foreign intelligence, and there are a number of limitations enshrined in the law with respect to domestic activity.
So you will advise the director that it would be illegal and wrong if the CIA was asked to help work with the military in enforcing against the enemy within? Simple yes or no would be fine.
As I said, Section 104A provides that.
So I'll take that as a yes. Mr. Simmons, you obviously well informed. Do you see any decline in threats from China, Russia, or international terrorists in terms of their effort to try to undermine the United States of America?
Vice Chairman, I think we still face significant threats to our national security.
So no undermining of those. We've not seen China and Russia pull back from cyber attacks.
Not to my knowledge, Vice Chairman.
We've not seen terrorists across the Middle East. The chairman and I agree we have to search those out and destroy them. They have not lessened their hatred for America.
Not to my knowledge.
I appreciate that. Again, and I'm not going to ask you a policy question then about why we are taking FBI agents between 25 and 45% off of their duties in those critical tasks and putting them on the immigration detail where, frankly, reports we've got back is they feel that they are candidly wasting their time. But listen, if you get confirmed, you're going to have a very important job. And CIA general counsels in the past have been between a rock and a hard place many times, and I hope you will adhere to this. I do want to make sure, again, one of the things the chairman said was to the fullest extent possible, you will brief all members of the committee on intelligence activities and covert activities rather than just the chairman and the vice chairman?
Yes, Vice Chairman.
I'm going to hold you there. Very quickly, Mr. Metzger, just, you know, this committee has spent a lot of time looking at China and economic competition. I know you cited a number of things around drug and terrorism and other. I hope you will continue to work with us. I think the OIA has a great deal of opportunities to really look at this economic competition with China, and I hope you'll continue to work with us on that subject.
Vice Chairman, thank you for your question. Certainly, I share your concern about China and economic encroachment, and if confirmed, I pledge to continue working with this committee to that end.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cornyn.
Congratulations to both of you and your families on your nomination. Mr. Metzger, you and I haven't had a chance to work directly together, but if Senator Rounds vouches for you, that's good enough for me.
Thank you,
Mr.
Senator.
Simmons, we had a more extended conversation, which I enjoyed very much in my office. But, and we talked about how lawyers in the intelligence community determine what the law is and how different that is than the typical lawyer in private practice who's got statutes, constitution, case law, and are able to basically get a pretty good idea of what the law is, although lawyers are famous for being able to argue both sides of a legal issue, so and not agree. But one statute that is in the law is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, Section 702. And you're familiar with the importance of that particular provision and the foreign intelligence that allows the U.S. government to glean. And I believe the figure is that about 60% of the president's daily brief is a product of that section of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. You also know that we fairly recently reformed the law and dealt with concerns, legitimate concerns, about abuses and privacy concerns, which we are obviously concerned with as well. But do you support the reauthorization of Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act as it is currently written?
Thank you, Senator. And I enjoyed meeting with you as well. Yes, I do support reauthorization. I think Director Radcliffe said it well when he spoke here that it is an indispensable national security tool. I've seen at the State Department as well, in addition to the statistic you gave about the president's daily brief, that information derived from Section 702 provides critical insights for a wide range of U.S. foreign policy and national security issues on a daily basis.
Well, again, in our conversation in my office, we were sort of commiserating about, again, how different the role of a lawyer is in the intelligence community than in private practice, where you do have a lot more that you can refer to and in terms of the statutes and case law and the like. But basically, as a lawyer in the intelligence community, you have limited tools. You have the Constitution, you have executive orders, you have statutes like the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, but many times there is no clear legal answer. And I appreciate the chairman's line of inquiry. Recently, I was reading a book by Dan Wang called Breakneck, who compared China and America. And he said the problem in America is we have lawyers running the government. In China, they're all engineers, and they know how to build things. And lawyers are famous for saying no and creating obstacles to getting to a solution or an outcome. But let me just ask you again, do you view it as your job to advise the policymakers on how they can achieve their objectives legally, as opposed to just saying, no, you can't do that? Do you try to help them? Do you try to help to get to yes by saying you can do it in this way but not that way?
Thank you, Senator. That is a good summary of my approach. I think, as you said, the starting point is going to be the text of the Constitution, of the relevant statute or the executive order. But then it's critical to understand the objective of the policymaker. And then the question becomes, what is the authorization for that? And what is the path forward that complies with the law? And I think it is challenging because there is not case law, but it does take careful, thoughtful lawyering to analyze that legal basis and provide counsel on how to proceed toward an objective in a way that complies with the law.
And I told you that I was a fan of General Hayden's book called Playing to the Edge, because I don't want the intelligence community to be risk averse or worried about their legal their exposure, for example. I want to be able to let them operate within the law, but to the extent the law permits them to engage in operations that are in the national security interests of the United States, I want them to do it without fear that they are stepping over the line or engaging in or exposing themselves to liability of some kind. Do you agree that part of your job is going to be to define where that line is to the extent possible so that the operators, the policymakers, can operate within the law, but up to where the law, make sure within the law, but within to the maximum the law permits?
Thank you, Senator. I do agree with that.
Thank you.
Senator Wyden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to use about a minute of my time for a brief statement and then a unanimous consent request and then on to questions.
So you're not going to yield back 4 minutes of your time to me?
I know that it's tempting that I do that, but I thank my colleague and for his
Fire away.
Confirmation hearings of intelligence agency general counsels are the only opportunity Congress and the public have to hear the nominees' views before they go on to make legal decisions in secret. And yet this year's intelligence authorization bill would eliminate Senate advice and consent for both the CIA and ODNI general counsels, meaning that this will be the last of these hearings. The chairman and I have talked about this. I've got a longer statement opposing the provisions, and my unanimous consent request, Mr. Chairman, would be to have a letter to the committee from 21 organizations that I have entered into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Simmons, I want to follow up on what we talked about in the office, and I appreciated your coming up. Do you agree that there is no basis in law for designating domestic terrorist organizations?
Thanks for your question, Senator, and I also appreciated the opportunity to meet with you. As discussed, my focus at the State Department, for example, has been on a foreign terrorist organization designation. That's a statutory authority, 8 U.S.C. Section 1189, which provides a decision about what is a foreign terrorist organization, and one prong of that analysis is that it be a foreign organization. There are a number of factors around the analysis of whether it's a foreign organization, such as where's the base of operations, what's the location and nationality of members of that organization.
My time is pretty short, and we've had others come here, and I got a clear yes answer, and I thought that's what we would do today. So, again, is there a basis in law for designating domestic terrorist organizations, or is there no basis?
Again, my focus, Senator, at State Department and has been on the question of a foreign terrorist organization. So I've reviewed authorities or analysis with respect to a domestic organization.
I just think that's unfortunate because I left the meeting yesterday believing that you thought there was no basis in law for designating domestic terrorist organizations. This is a crucial issue because the president has taken the position that he can designate Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. I hope you'll give us a yes or no answer, at least for the record, so we can have some sense of where you would be going on this. One other question, if I might. Secretary Rubio has said that one of those boats the administration blew up could have been interdicted instead. And we've been talking about these kinds of issues in this committee for some time. Is it legal to kill people who they could have captured or arrested?
Senator, I understand there have been submissions to Congress from the administration, a war powers report, and a notice under Section 1230. I also understand that the General Counsel of the Department of War attended and participated in a classified briefing on that issue last week and would refer questions about those military activities to them.
I would only say, yesterday I left the meeting with the sense that you had some concrete thoughts about policy direction, not how things would come up in imaginary scenarios, but a policy direction. Today, I haven't felt that way. On the basis of this, I'm going to be opposing your nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Langford.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you to both of you for your service to the nation. Mr. Simmons, my question for you is very straightforward. Who's the better attorney, you or your wife?
My wife.
Okay, good answer. Good answer in a public setting when you're under oath. Appreciate that. For y'all, thank you for the time that you've given to the nation, sacrifices that your family's gone through. Mr. Metzger, I was the practice round for Senator Rounds, where you and I had a couple of years to be able to serve together as a designee. I saw how hard you worked and how professional you did. I also got to hear the love story of your time with your bride and then be able to go through that process. So grateful for that time with you. Let me get a chance to be able to bounce a couple of questions off you, though. Mr. Metzger, I want to be able to drill down a little bit more. Oklahoma made the decision several years ago, which I vehemently disagreed with, but we vote in my state, like we do around the country, to allow medical marijuana use in my state with a very loose law. It was the belief of some that then we wouldn't have illegal marijuana in the state, that would all be legalized. What has happened has been an influx of thousands of Chinese operations coming to our state. The Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics has identified what they believe is 2,000 illegal Chinese marijuana grows. Human trafficking that has come into the state, all sorts of illegal activity in the distribution of drugs across the country coming from my own home state. Now, a lot of that's going to be based on tracking dollars, tracking the movement of people that have come across our border illegally that was allowed under the Biden administration. This has been a very difficult issue. It is one of many issues that Treasury has to identify on how we're moving fentanyl, other drugs, and drug operations into our country. How do you plan to be able to take that on?
Senator, first of all, thank you for your very kind words and for your question. Secondly, I share your concern with regard to Chinese economic encroachment, be it through fentanyl precursor trafficking to Mexico and to the narco-terrorist cartels there, or in your home state of Oklahoma with regard to marijuana grow and distribution. As I said in my opening statement, if confirmed, I plan to scour the Office of Intelligence and Analysis and encourage the team there to pursue all of the Chinese economic misgivings with regard to fentanyl, drug use, and anti-money laundering. As I understand it, in Treasury, there's a fantastic team in FinCEN and the AML, anti-money laundering team. And as potential customers, were I to be confirmed, I look forward to keeping them apprised of relevant and recent financial intelligence.
So you'd have a unique role in the CFIUS process to be able to examine, operations that are trying to be able to move in, purchase land, purchase businesses, all those. That's a powerful role to be able to be engaged in to help identify where there's potential long-term threats. How do you see that role and what you would have responsibility for?
Senator, thank you for your question. I think you're right. The CFIUS process and the committee itself is one of the tantamount responsibilities of the Treasury in this modern era. As I understand, the Assistant Secretary for Intelligence Analysis is tasked with ensuring that the Secretary, the President, and the other cabinet-level officials on the committee receive timely and accurate information with regard to foreign investment in the United States and are able to make a determination or make reference to the President for his determination.
Be helpful. Mr. Metzger, one last question on this. Mr. Simmons, you're getting off easy with me on that. We had great conversation in the office, and I appreciate your input on that. Mr. Metzger, during the Biden administration, Iran was considered the largest state sponsor of terrorism. We had sanctions on their oil sales, but public reports say last year Iran was still sold $43 billion of oil, much of it to China. How do we wrap our arms around some of the sanctions violations that are happening with the actual largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world?
Senator, thank you for your question. I share your concern with regard to Iran. As you know, I think during the first Trump administration, the president demonstrated deft and sound leadership with regard to containing Iran, with regard to countering Iran and their illicit financial activities, and most importantly, with regard to countering their global terror network. I think at the end of the day, if confirmed to serve as Assistant Secretary of the Office of Intelligence and Analysis, it'll be incumbent upon me to follow the money, to counter illicit money laundering, and to ensure that Iran isn't able to evade U.S. sanctions designations.
Thank you both.
Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both for your willingness to serve. Mr. Simmons, the White House recently informed Congress that President Trump has declared us to be at, quote, war with unspecified drug cartels in the Western Hemisphere. Citing new anti-cartel authorities, President Trump also directed airstrikes against boats in the Caribbean, allegedly carrying drug traffickers and narcotics. Mr. Simmons, in your capacity as Principal Deputy Legal Advisor to Secretary Rubio, did you play any role in the deliberations surrounding these new anti-cartel authorities?
Thanks for your question,
Thank
Senator.
you for being here.
I've advised on a wide range of national security matters while at the State Department.
Did you advise on the anti-cartel authorities that the administration has used? Let me ask you, that the administration has used in part to justify the actions that have been taken against those cartels?
Thanks, Senator. I'm not in a position to discuss the specifics of any internal
I'm not asking you the
operations.
specifics other than to ask you if you were involved in those discussions.
Senator, as I said, I'm not in a position to discuss the specifics of internal
I don't know why
deliberations.
you can't tell this committee the answer to that question.
I appreciate that, Senator, and I hope you'll understand the importance of leadership receiving confidential advice.
What is your understanding in front of this committee of the limits on the president's authority to use military force to combat criminal activity like drug trafficking?
Thank you, Senator. I mentioned previously the notice under Section 1230, which stated that it was an exercise of the President's Article 2 authority in self-defense and defense of others against ongoing attacks by designated
Is that
terrorists.
the advice that you gave to the Secretary of State on this subject?
Senator, these were military strikes conducted by the Department of War, and as I said, the General Counsel of that department.
Is it correct that you didn't have any discussion about this at the State Department?
Senator, as I said, I'm not in a position to. I don't know all of the discussions that may or may not have taken place.
Is
at
it
the
correct
State
that you
Department.
did not participate in any discussions about this while you were at the State Department?
Senator, as I said, I'm not in a position to discuss any legal advice that I may or may not have provided.
Do you agree that the CIA doesn't have any authority to conduct operations within U.S. borders to counter drug cartels?
Thank you, Senator. I agree that there are significant limitations enshrined in the law with respect to any domestic activities by the CIA.
Do you agree that designating or labeling an organization as a quote-unquote terrorist organization is not in itself a sufficient basis to justify the use of force against that organization?
Thanks for your question, Senator. I mentioned previously the designation, the FTO designation as a foreign terrorist organization, and that assessment, in addition to the point I discussed about requiring a foreign organization, requires that there be terrorist activity and threats against the United States. That FTO designation has a separate legal purpose in the sense that it relates to sanctions when there's material support. It's a separate legal category than a lawful use of force, but the assessment includes one about threats to United States national security.
Do you believe that designating or labeling an organization as a terrorist organization is itself a sufficient basis to justify the use of force against that organization? Is that your reading of the law?
My reading, specifically on the Foreign Terrorist Organization FTO designation, does not legally have a decisive impact either way on the lawful use of force.
Do you agree, Mr. Simmons, that anti-cartel authorities provide no basis for the administration to justify any actions against its domestic political opponents, whom various administration officials have also designated as terrorists?
Thanks for your question, Senator. I'm not familiar with all of the law around anti-cartel activities. As I said, if the focus is on...
I'm not asking you, this is not a hard question, this is an easy question. So let me ask it again. Do you agree that these so-called anti-cartel authorities provide no basis for the administration to justify any actions against its domestic political opponents, whom various administration officials have also designated as terrorists? I'm asking you for your view as a lawyer.
I'm not sure which anti-cartel authorities you are referring to.
Well, the ones that you and I have been talking about for the last 5 minutes. Mr. Simmons.
Is there a specific statutory provision you have in mind?
I've given you the specific language that the administration has relied on to take the actions that it's taken, and now I'm asking you whether or not the administration could use that, I hear you, Mr. Chairman, I apologize, could use that authority to turn it against its domestic political opponents, some of whom it called terrorists. And I find it very hard to believe that anybody with a law degree, much less somebody with your excellent preparation, can't answer that question directly. And the answer is no. I can't believe that that's not your answer, Mr. Simmons.
Well, I think, as I said, that FTO designation requirement includes as a factor that there be a foreign organization.
I'll take that as a no. Thank you,
Senator
Mr.
Rounds.
Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Simmons, first of all, let me just kind of rephrase a little bit here. What's your understanding of the General Counsel's role in providing timely and relevant reporting to congressional oversight committees? You're in front of an oversight committee right now. Share with me your thoughts. What do you consider to be timely in terms of your role in making sure that it gets done?
Thank you, Senator, and I appreciated the opportunity to meet with you. Sections 502 and 503 of the National Security Act make clear that the CIA would keep the intelligence committees fully and currently informed of intelligence activities, and with due regard for protection of classified information. There's also a separate provision, Section 510, that provides that the general counsels of each element of the intelligence community, so including the general counsel of the CIA, would notify the committee of any significant legal interpretation of the Constitution or federal law affecting intelligence activities. So in addition to the general obligation to keep this committee fully and currently informed, and I think the general counsel's responsibility would be to advise on, apply that statutory provision to any particular facts and circumstances. And then there's a separate provision specifically on significant legal interpretations.
In our office, we talked a little bit about some of the advanced technology that is deployed or will be deployed, and not only by us, but by our adversaries as well, and artificial intelligence and the use of the quantum, lack of a better term, the quantum environment is going to be a critical part of that advancement, and it's happening a lot faster than people realize. How do you plan to augment the efforts that are ongoing, and how do you see your role in the development or the use of this particular advancement in technology?
Thank you, Senator. I agree that these emerging technologies are critically important, and I do think that it is critical to have good legal analysis around these emerging technologies because, as this committee surely knows, the law sometimes struggles to keep up with the technology. These advances are happening so rapidly, and so it's a question of reviewing the law that exists with an innovative and careful analysis, applying it to a new technology. That's something I've done in the private sector. I was involved in a litigation matter related to the largest Bitcoin mining facility in North America. These are huge data centers. They are important to our national security, important to our strategic advantages, and if confirmed as general counsel, it would be a priority of mine to provide that innovative, careful legal analysis of existing statutory and legal frameworks to emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and so on.
Thank you. Mr. Metzger, I don't think they've hazed you much yet today, and I suspect that you're probably not going to get much hazing at all. I think your reputation on this committee is such that while we hate to lose you from the committee, we most certainly think that you're moving to a spot in which you can be a real asset to the Department of the Treasury. Let me speak to you. Can you speak a little bit of how your time on this committee will support the role of which you've been nominated?
Certainly, Senator. Thank you for your question. Over the last 4 years, I've had a front row seat to the absolutely critical nature of congressional oversight that knows no bounds with regard to the intelligence community. If confirmed, I look forward to continuing robust cooperation with this committee, with its members, and with its professional staff, whom I am very, very proud to call peers and colleagues.
Thank you. I'm going to slide back to Mr. Simmons for just a second. I think with regard to artificial intelligence and what we're going to be seeing happening, I think the message that we would like to share with you is that if something was wrong before, not legal before, the use of artificial intelligence in that action does not make it right. Or if something was right before and the use of artificial intelligence is applied to speed up a process, it does not make it wrong. Would that be a fair way to begin the discussion?
Thank you, Senator. I think that's a good example of the type of innovative application of the law as it exists to an emerging technology.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Simmons, I'm a little confused. You've mentioned several times a department that doesn't exist in our government. What's the name of the department that Mr. Hegseth is a secretary of?
Thank you, Senator. It is, by statute, the Department of Defense. And
why did you call it the Department of War? That's not the name. Its name is the Department of Defense, according to 10 U.S.C. 111A in the National Security Amendments of 1949. Why are you making something up?
Thank you, Senator. That sounds like an astute citation by a UVA law grad. I would say that there's an executive order that...
Executive orders aren't law, Mr. Simmons. The statutes of the United States are laws. If that name's going to be changed, it should be changed here. But let me move on. There's a rumor circulating that people applying for promotions or assignments or admission to employment at the CIA are being asked to affirm the assertion that Donald Trump won the election in 2020. Were you asked that question, and do you know of anybody else that's being asked that question?
Thank you, Senator. I'm not aware of that question being asked. I think I agree with what Director Radcliffe said when he was here, which is that it is critical for our intelligence to be apolitical so that our policymakers are best informed about.
So it's untrue that that's become a litmus test in the CIA?
I'm certainly not aware of that, Senator.
Thank you. I appreciate that. as Secretary Rubio revoked the status of several lawful permanent residents when you were the acting general counsel, based on their exercise of the First Amendment, the court said this was a misuse of the power of their respective offices to target non-citizen pro-Palestinians for deportation, primarily on account of their First Amendment protected political speech. Were you involved in the decision that supported in the upcoming support for that decision by Secretary Rubio?
Thank you, Senator. As I said before, I'm not in a position to discuss specific.
I don't buy that, Mr. Simmons. I know about executive privilege and about legal privilege. That goes to the content. You won't even tell us if you were in the room. I don't think that's privileged. I'm asking you, did you provide advice on this subject to Secretary Rubio? There's no privilege for that statement.
There have been many matters in which the statutory authority with respect to lawful permanent residence has arisen. A number of them are in litigation now, and those cases are being litigated in the courts.
It's not you're doing a really great job today of not answering questions. The question is really simple. Were you involved in providing advice to the Secretary on the issue of the revocation of lawful permanent residence on the basis of their free speech assertions? Simple yes or no question. Were you involved? Did you provide advice?
Senator, sitting here today, I do not recall specifically whether I advised on that exact issue.
Okay, well, I guess I have to take that. Another straightforward yes or no question: is it legal for the CIA to engage in activities in the continental United States?
Thank you for your question, Senator. The definition of covert action in Section 503 refers to activities abroad. And I think there are other.
So the answer to my question is it is not legal, right? I asked you a question. Is it legal for the CIA to conduct activities within the United States? Yes or no?
I think there are, incidental or ancillary, activities that happen in the United States, whether covert action.
People go to work at Langley. I get that. But I don't understand you've even read the law that said the law is the CIA can only operate abroad. That's the assumption of this committee for as long as I've been on it. Can't you just say that?
Senator, I agree. There are significant limitations on the CIA in the law. There are no police, subpoena, or law enforcement powers. There's no internal security function. There are
covert action, no, right? Intelligence collection, no. Correct?
The mission of the CIA is foreign intelligence.
That's good. Thank you. The actions in the Caribbean. You mentioned that we'd had a briefing, that Congress had been briefed. They did say the notice, but I was in a hearing of the Armed Services Committee earlier this week with the General Counsel of the Defense Department, and they won't give us the opinion that underlies that provides a legal basis. They say that's classified or it's internal deliberations or something. The Congress has not seen the Office of Legal Counsel opinion as to the legality of those strikes, and I think it's important to emphasize that Congress has not been given that. As a lawyer, as a professor of law, doesn't it give you some pause that under this situation, the president is designating an organization as a terrorist organization and then taking lethal action? The president is the prosecutor, the judge, the jury, and the executioner. Doesn't that bother you as a student of the law?
Thanks for your question, Senator. First of all, I haven't reviewed all the classified information around this, so I don't know all the facts and circumstances. I would say that Article 2 of the Constitution provides that the president is the commander-in-chief, and there are authorities with respect to self-defense.
What does the Constitution say about who declares war?
I think Senator Wyden raised that. Article 1 provides that Congress shall have the power to declare war.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony today. As I mentioned earlier, it's my intention to hold a committee vote on these nominations as soon as possible. Therefore, for planning purposes, any member who wishes to submit questions for the record after today's hearing, please do so by close of business tomorrow, October 9th. I trust that we can count on prompt answers from our two nominees to allow for our further consideration. Vice Chairman?
No, I appreciate both witnesses' testimonies. I'm not going to ask you again, but I am going to expect that there is this adherence to the law. I hate to have to ask that question, but I've seen two, I think, distinguished individuals who stuck by that and lost their jobs as U.S. attorneys. I hope you will at least review those circumstances and make those same kind of commitments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, everyone, for your attendance today. The hearing is adjourned.